Lloyd Vance Insider Football is back on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. Thanks for everybody for joining us this evening. Lots to get to around the National Football League. Obviously, though, Kevin, the big news and everything coming up is Thursday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is the start of the NFL Draft. 3 days of draft picks, 257 players, I believe, will find new destinations. Are you hyped for the draft, Kevin?
I'm hyped for Pittsburgh already, Lloyd. Once again, if you want to take a look real quick, we're flyered up here. We're still flyered up. But that being said, we're as close as we can get. This is the last show before the draft. And once the draft happens, the season is legitimately on its way.
Yeah, and what's Kevin going to do now? The Eagles took a linebacker a couple years ago, Jahad Campbell, and now we finally don't have to talk about Jerry Sizemore Jerry Robinson, and the last time the Philadelphia Eagles took a linebacker. What do you think the Eagles are going to do? All my friends and family, the Eagles folks, want to know, and since you're Philly, Kevin, let's get your take on it. I still think it'll be O-line or D-line.
O-line, D-line, I'm 92% sure they'll do that. But with the A.J. Brown news more so coming out again today and yesterday about after June 1st, he might very well be on his way to New England. That being said, how he might do something, how he might move up, how he might grab a wide receiver. And I was just looking at the wide receivers if they stayed where they were. A name that pops up to me is KC Conception out of Texas A&M. I think he could be a guy they could grab, but that's a high pick to grab that guy. And I don't know, but I'm like you, though. I think they're going to stick offensive line, defensive line, but they could definitely go rogue here.
Yeah, the interesting thing, and as Kevin was pointing out, is the Philadelphia Eagles have made a lot of moves in terms of their wide receiver position. Signed Elijah Moore. They signed Hollywood Brown coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs. Traded for Dontavian Wicks from the Green Bay Packers. That was for a 2027 sixth-round pick. And they gave him an extension, too, 1 year, $12.5 million extension. And that shows you the Eagles are starting to make moves and plans to kind of life after A.J. Brown, I believe. And it's been no secret that, June 1st, the cap hit will be a lot less, and they'll start life after A.J. Brown. Is that the right move, Kevin, going without A.J. Brown? I know he's a pain in the butt, and he had a down year last year. So is that the right move, though?
In 2026 in the world of sports, yes. And, you go back to the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, it's like, nah, man, you go to work, you put that stuff behind you, you try to, work through it for the better of the team and the better of winning. The thing that hurts the Eagles, I think, is the fact they won a Super Bowl. These guys got their rings already. So now they want to get the cheddar with the rings and the happiness and everything else. So, for the betterment of the team, should they stay together? Absolutely. But in this day and age, when someone's got their ring already, they just want to be happy and get their numbers and maybe go to Canton.
Yes, and I think a lot of times, NBA and the NFL guys are looking at NBA players and seeing how they kind of have the leverage and the hammer when they're doing negotiations, and they kind of control the narrative sometimes where they go. And I think A.J. Brown's like, look, I've had enough with this Eagles locker room, but I'm beholden to the team. And to their credit, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, they're like, yeah, you're under contract. We're going to keep you. We're not giving you away until we get proper value. If they do make this trade, is it a first round, Kevin? Is it a second rounder? I just don't think they're going to get a first round draft pick for A.J. Brown at this time. And when you look at, I was looking at the history of like some receivers that were traded for first rounders, the Dallas Cowboys and the Detroit Lions way back in the day with around 2008 or so. Roy Williams went for a first round pick and a lot, and they just didn't get the value for him. So a lot of teams are gun shy.
I wouldn't do it myself. If I was a GM in the NFL, and I still have time, don't get me wrong, Howie, I'm watching you. I would definitely not trade a number one pick for A.J. Brown. I think best case scenario, the Eagles could get a second and a third. Realistically, probably a third and a fourth. But if they can get a second and a third, call it a win.
And teams are so valued his first rounder so much, and as you said, with the cap ramifications of him being traded before June 1st, I just don't think that's going to happen for the Philadelphia Eagles. So they're hold on to him. The draft's going to happen, as we said, this week starting on April 23rd. In the 2026 class, he'll be in for everybody, and then it'll be like, all right, for the future, X team, what do you want to do in terms of trading for AJ Brown? And a lot of times teams are very happy with their rosters after the draft, and they're excited. Hope springs eternal. And then you got this mess hanging over the Eagles' head. So they've said he's on the team, and then they mutter for now. So it's all done deal. But we'll see how the whole Vrabel mess with Brissini and this was a least kept secret in terms of A.J. Brown, and if they're still in the mix, I still believe the Patriots want him to add to that receiver room that's kind of lacking. They're talking about Booty may be on the trading block. Kentron Booty, a guy like him from their staff, and then they maybe slide A.J. Brown in there. But it's going to be interesting. But as you were saying, the receiver class, they got some serious names coming out here, and the Eagles are picking at number 23. Jordan Tyson from Arizona, Mekhi Lemon from USC, Carnell Tate from Ohio State, Denzel Boston, maybe a guy that may be available for them at 23. He's from the University of Washington. But those first three guys I named, I think they'll be long gone. The Eagles would have to trade up to get them. Casey Concepcion, as you said, Texas A&M, 5'11", 190. Heard varying reports on him, whether he's a top 15 guy or he'll be available for the teams that made the playoffs. He's kind of a slot guy, kind of smallish. But is the receiver the marquee position in this draft?
That and edge. Everywhere I look, everyone's taking an edge guy. Edge guy. All the mock drafts I look at, everyone's taking an edge. So I think besides edge, I think it is wide receiver. I think, once again, people get hung up on the fantasy guys, the fantasy relevant guys. So they're getting a lot of pub right now, I think, because the only running back you really hear about is Jeremiah Love. And then you hear about Mendoza at quarterback. So it all falls back to the wide receivers.
Yeah, and we'll see if it's an offensive lineman, and the names that I'm hearing for the Philadelphia Eagles, because they have to rebuild that offensive line. You have Max. I can anchor. From Arizona State, 6'6", 330. That's one of the names I'm hearing if the Eagles are offensive line. Also, Caden Proctor from Alabama. He's 6'7", 360. A lot of times they have used him gadget plays at Alabama at like the goal line. He's a big hulking guy, offensive lineman. And Howie, we know, loves the SEC guys. And there's one other SEC lineman everybody's talking about, Monroe Freeling, coming out of Georgia, who everybody is said may be available for the Eagles, may fall to them. Freeling is 6'7", 315, but he may not get past Detroit per se at like 17.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Lloyd. Who's the one guy? I don't want to mispronounce his name. What is it, like Spano or something like that? The offensive tackle.
Yes, so there is Spencer Fano coming out of Utah. He's 6'6", 310. Now, with him, Kevin, they're saying he's the number 2 rated tackle coming out, and he may go like to the Browns at like where they're picking at 6 if they don't go receiver like a Carnell Tate. The main tackle everybody's talking about is Francis Sissy Mayaga. Hopefully I'm saying that right. University of Miami, 6'6", 315. He's got the feed. He only allowed 2 sacks last year. So very strong tackle class. And I just believe with the age on Lane Johnson and the injuries to the rest of the offensive line, that the Eagles will look for the offensive line in the first round.
I think definitely with the amount of help they need on that offensive line as they're getting older, as guys are getting more banged up through their careers now year after year, you draft someone who can take Lane Johnson's spot, but someone who can play guard this year. Have him play guard next to Lane if need be, and then basically eventually take over Lane Johnson's role.
Yeah, and you have Tyler Steen, who kind of underachieved last year for the Philadelphia Eagles at that right guard position after Mekhi Becton went to the Chargers. Now, Mekhi Becton is available again. He was a little banged up for the Chargers. No Statland, who gave him the rebirth. So it's going to be interesting. Would the Eagles sign him? And I'm sure they're talking to his agent, but that could be another option for them. But definitely that offensive line, I think, is an area of need for the Philadelphia Eagles. We talked about last week, maybe defensive line with Milton Williams going to the Patriots last year and playing so well, but I think they can get by because they have Jordan Davis under contract, and Jalen Carter is one of the best in the league, win motivated, and I think they're trying to motivate him before giving him that big contract.
Yeah, it's a big year for him, that's for sure. It's like to show up, to take out all the knucklehead, bonehead kind of things, being young. I mean, who can forget game one last year against Dallas? The guy's out of the game before it even really starts. So, I mean, just that maturation process of growing up, it's a big year for him to get his money, and you got to show that you're a grown up now and you can, put some things aside. That once again being said, I'm with you with the offensive line. I mean, they really do need to. Lane's not going to play forever. I mean, come on. At a certain point, he's like, you know what? I'm done. So I think that's the way they have to go. But like I said, that wide receiver position, that's the tricky one in this.
Yeah, wide receiver sexy. And the thing is, as long as it's not an Andre Dillard or a Danny Watkins type, Lester Holmes, Antone Davis, I could go on and on with the Eagles' stellar history or some offensive lineman they've taken. As long as it's not one of those type of offensive linemen, I think fans will be satisfied that they know that's a cornerstone for this team because in 2024, that unit carried this team to a Super Bowl victory and Saquon Barkley within a couple yards of breaking Eric Dickerson's record.
And also throw Kevin Allen into that mix too for the Eagles fans that remember. He's one of prison's finest after he left the Eagles. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's
Um,
named to
yeah,
forget.
and the whole thing is also, it's like you got to realize Mailata now is starting to get some, wear and tear on his body. He's getting older. You got the Jurgens and Dickersons, and it's like you have to start rebuilding, and this is probably the draft to do it.
Yeah, an interesting thing, Kevin, is a team they're going to be facing. They 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 got a little bit weaker, in my opinion, on the defensive line. The New York Giants, the trade came down this week in between our shows. Dexter Lawrence gets traded from the Giants to the Cincinnati Bengals for their first round pick, which is pick number 10 in the 2026 draft. The Bengals extend Dexter Lawrence, 1 year, $28 million extension. So he got his money. He's happy. But yeah, you wanted to be traded? Okay, we're sending you to NFL Siberia. Welcome to the Bengals. And in my opinion, I was on Rich Q's show earlier today. I was telling him, I said, I think the Giants made out better in this deal. I mean, number 10 overall, and Dexter Lawrence is 28. He looks a little out of shape too, in my opinion, when they had his press conference, and you start wondering, is he on a downturn? Because last year he only had half a sack last year.
I think it was a great trade by the Giants. I think it was a trade made by a team that sat there. They've had a good draft. The guys just can't stay healthy the last couple of seasons. So you sit there, and now what are they at? 5-10, I believe, in the draft. They have two first
Yeah,
round picks coming, 5 and 10,
correct.
and they can reload. And you got a malcontent defensive tackle who's on the downward side of his career, and especially the money that he got extended for as well. On top of that, you got him out of there, and you got a top 10 pick with it. And that's a move by a coach that's taken this job in Harbaugh that's going to be there for a while. And he's like, give me draft picks and we'll figure this out.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what the Giants do with their GM, Joe Shane. He's kind of stuck around last regime. Brian Daboll, they got rid of him and his whole staff, and a lot of players been coming in and out of this team. But I do agree with you, Kevin. The Giants, this is scary because, listen to this, first round picks 5 and 10. Second round, they're picking number 37, that's a guy that's going to fall out of the first round, and he is in his second round value. Then they have round 4, pick 105. Round 5, pick 145. Round 6, they have 2 picks. They actually have 3 picks in round 6. So I think they're really loading up. And in terms of, filling needs, you look at the Giants, they're picking at number 5. How scary would it to the NFC East if they got a Caleb Downs, from Ohio State. Everybody's talking about the difference maker in terms of safety position, or a Carnell Tate at five, and then they turn around at 10 and they fill some other need, with a blue chip type of player.
I mean, if I'm a Giant fan, which never would ever happen unless they were playing New England in a Super Bowl, and that's the only times, or Dallas, and that's the only times I've ever rooted for them. But you have to be happy right now. It's like you've sat through this horrible run of Giants football, and it's like if you do this right, you can reload. But once again, Shane's there making the calls, and he maybe gets roasted a little too much for the Saquon thing. I think the thing that killed him was it was on Hard Knocks, and everyone got to see it. But at the same time, they've drafted guys who look like they can play. It's the health issue; they can't stay on the field.
Yeah, and in the end, Kevin, I think that, Mara has brought in John Harbaugh to run this team. Yeah, Shane's going to be there, and they made it crystal clear to everybody. This is Harbaugh's team. He was the first coach to be hired off the scrap heap. He was only on there about 2 days, so they've given him full control of this team, and we'll see if Shane survives after the draft. A lot of times, scouting departments, their contracts run out after the draft, and then they kind of clean house, and we'll see how it goes. Another team. It's interesting. Another personnel situation, and another player griping. And right away, I was like, oh, I got to talk to Kevin about this, because this guy played pretty good in fantasy football, but let's face it, he has zero leverage. Cardinals quarterback Jacoby Brissett, he decides he's going to sit out training camp, OTAs, and he's like, hey, new head coach Mike LaFleur and GM Monty Ossenford, I want a contract too, because I'm the starter. And what do you think about that? Does he even have a hammer? Does he even have a hammer?
Jacoby Brissett should be happy he has a job in the NFL. How many times was he a hanger-on backup quarterback? If he was your backup quarterback, I would say he should be paid as one of the top backup quarterbacks, yes. But if he wants some big starter money as a quarterback in the NFL, I think he's getting a little too ahead of himself at this point. I mean, you're still the Cardinals. You haven't won anything. You haven't done anything. So I get it. He's trying to get paid, but at the same time, it's like you can't disrupt the flow of that team trying to come together if you do any kind of holdout or anything.
Yeah, and the thing is, he had a good season, but a lot of his stats to Michael Wilson and those guys, it was in garbage time. It was games that were out of hand, and he's putting. Yes, for us fantasy football players and the player prop people, yeah, he did a nice job. But in terms of real football and winning games, he wasn't bringing much to the table. So he doesn't have much leverage. I think he should get to camp. The fines for missing OTAs are not a lot. A lot of times it's just they have bonuses in their contract, but he's playing a dangerous game there, because if he's thinking about holding out training camp, he's crazy at 80,000 per missed day of training camp when you're under contract. And the Cardinals brought in, grizzled veteran Gardner Minshew, who's now bounced all around the league, and they're going to give him his chance to come in the door. And also, I don't think they do it, but they're picking at the number 3 position. They've been linked with Ty Simpson coming out of Alabama. And what do you think about Ty Simpson?
We touched on it a little bit last week. Somebody's going to do something stupid. Someone's going to make a move and try to get Ty Simpson like in the first 8 picks, and it's going to blow up in their face. The key is, who is it going to be? And it's nothing against Ty Simpson. It's a reach at that pick. You can find a Ty Simpson after the first round, but I guarantee you somebody does it.
Yes, and unfortunately, everybody's piling on that young man, and I think a lot of it has to do with when you're a good quarterback on a team with all that talent. It's just like, are you in the car or are you driving it? You know what I mean? And we've seen so many of these quarterbacks that had great groups around him. Think of it like a Matt Leinart, you know what I mean? A Brady Quinn. They were big time players coming out, and next thing you know, they just didn't live up to expectations in the National Football League. And we'll see which team does the reach for Ty Simpson. I tend to think, Kevin, that one of the teams I've been hearing associated with his name, and I think he had a visit with them, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're picking at number 21, and your guy Aaron Rodgers, once again, I don't know if he's doing peyote or what he's doing or having his off-season tea. he's holding the Steelers hostage once again, and they're letting him, a 42-year-old quarterback. They're letting him decide, am I coming back? Am I retiring? What do you think? Is 21 a possible landing spot for Simpson? And are the Steelers doing the right thing, letting Rodgers dictate this narrative?
I think the Steelers are so pissed that they've gotten themselves into this Aaron Rodgers situation where they're letting the old girl trying to take charge of who's going to be asked to the prom. It's like no one else is asking you to the prom, Aaron. It's like you want to go or not. So the fact is, the second year in a row the Steelers have put themselves in this situation just out of spite. They might go grab Ty Simpson just to shove it, in Aaron Rodgers' face. It's like, all right, if you want to play, now you come back on our terms. Can I see him doing it? Yeah. And because, once again, if not, who you rolling out there? Mason Rudolph, Will Howard. But yeah, someone's going to do it, man. It's going to happen. There will at least be two quarterbacks taken in the first round, I believe.
Yeah, I think there will, and I'm pretty sure there won't be two. You know what I mean? And talking about the first overall pick, Fernando Mendoza, as we talked about, really nice, high character young man. He's already pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered to the Raiders. I think they're already talking to his agent. He's looking at the playbook. Good size, 6'5", 225. 72% completion percentage. Clint Kubiak is coming in there. He's coming from Seattle with that, championship pedigree. John Spytek, Tom Brady with the ownership group. They're all thrilled about Fernando Mendoza. And the two comps that I'm hearing with him is Matt Ryan. So that would mean he's successful, former MVP, And then I liken him to Joey Harrington. I don't know if you remember him from the Detroit Lions. He looked the part. He was tall, well spoken. As Ryan, they look presidential. The hair, parted on the side and everything, and looks the part. But is that who Fernando Mendoza is? Is he going to be able to come into the Raiders and lead this team? A lot of people are saying the Raiders have had an extremely good offseason, like an A+ right now.
The one thing about Joey Harrington that always stands out to me is every time they'd show him on shows, he's a constantly trained pianist. So he's a very talented guy. You can play quarterback in the NFL and play the piano like that. That being said, Mendoza, the Raiders have to make the pick. I don't even know if he's the right guy. I don't know how successful he's going to be in the NFL. I don't know if he's got that dog in him to do it. But at the same time, they've put themselves in a position. You have the number one pick. You have to go with the best quarterback in the draft because, as we all know, in this league, you cannot win without a quarterback. So it's the pick they have to make.
Yeah, and the Raiders will see if they get Mendoza, and then later on in the draft, they got to fix that offensive line. I know they brought Linderbaum over from the Ravens to fix the center position, gave him that largest contract ever for interior lineman, but they have a lot more other holes on that offensive line. And we've seen that trend, that first quarterback taken, whether it was Caleb Williams, Cam Ward last year, they're usually the most sacked guy. So you don't want them running for your life. And you see the Chiefs. They have Kalafdis and they have Chris Jones in that division. Denver led the NFL in sacks last year. They're coming after people, Bonito and the rest of that group there. So the Raiders got to get some protection for Mendoza because you also don't want him to be gun shy. And how many games do you think Kirk Cousins starts before Mendoza's put in there?
I think Mendoza starts from jump. I think if
Oh,
he
wow,
has a
wow.
good, I think if he has a good preseason in this day and age, I think they put him out there. But the one thing is, just to harken back to other quarterbacks, like you said, they get sacked a lot usually if they're the first pick in the draft or they're in the first round. And you look back to David Carr, you look back to Tim Couch, guys that just got beat up, and even throw Joey Harrington into that, guys who get beat up, and all of a sudden man, they lose that edge. They're just they're seeing ghosts, they're just running and throwing the ball away. So yeah, you have to get him some offensive line help.
And Mendoza, I think with Colt Miller there and Linderbaum, who I was talking about, and they've rebuilt that defense. A big thing is getting Crosby back now. He's magically healthy. Lord, I'm healed. I don't know if it's the Ravens or the Raiders who he didn't want to be there or something. Now he's back with the Raiders, and they've done a lot in terms of building that team up. With the Kobe Dean and the rest of the other free agents that they brought in, and so people are very excited about the Raiders, and I think with that number one overall pick, there'll be more excitement. The funny thing though is Kevin, he said no, thank you. I'm not coming to Pittsburgh. I know we've talked about this in the past, in terms of guys deciding not to go. And if I was a high round guy, I probably would want to celebrate with friends and family rather than traveling. Now it's a traveling circus to the draft. It's a different city every year. I always liked it when it was in New York City.
I think it had more cachet when it was in New York City. It's like, especially guys who have never been to New York City. It's like, wow, I get to go to New York City. I'm on national TV. I get to pick my swag up and see how to show off how I look. And it's almost like when the Pro Bowl was in Hawaii. People was like, oh yeah, I want to go to Hawaii. And you start putting in like Florida. It's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just going to stay home. So the draft, I think, is becoming that way as well.
Yeah, and it was what in Green Bay, So a lot of the picks like I'm good. I don't need to go to Green Bay other than play there, and so. But I think they'll have a good contingent in the green room. I think a lot of the Ohio State guys are going to be there, and you're going to see a lot of Ohio State guys fly off the board. Arvell Reese, the edge from Ohio State, he's rated number one on defense, maybe number guy overall, maybe go number two, maybe go number three, somewhere around there. He's definitely going to be the fifth pick. He'll be going. Also, Caleb Downs, safety from Ohio State, another guy they're talking about top five. And then the number one receiver is Carnell Tate, also from Ohio State. How did they not win a national championship last year?
They ran into a buzzsaw in Indiana. They ran into some Mark Cuban dollars and some NIL money well spent. And next thing you know, I mean, Ohio State's loaded anymore. If you look at the teams that send pro players out, Ohio State's among, and the thing is, they don't just send pro players out; they send good pro players out. So the way they're doing things there it's impressive.
It is, and they become like receiver. Emeka Ibuka last year, and Cornell Tate. Everybody's just drooling over him. I mean, some team may jump up to grab him. Kevin 6'2", 190, had 48 catches last year for 938, 17 yards per catch, 9 touchdowns. Everybody known about him for a long time. He's one of them IMG Academy guys, so he's one of the top high school teams in the country, and does he live up to expectations? Because we saw Ibuka last year kind of hit a wall. It's tough for receivers. Marvin Harrison, another Ohio State guy, he's kind of regressed, and people are wondering, was he worth that top 5 selection?
I think people drafted Marvin Harrison Jr.'s name more so than his ability, to be honest. And I think also when say your father is so successful in your line of work, I mean, that's a heavy burden to carry as well. So he's dealing with a lot of that. And you got to think where these guys, the top wide receivers, land. Usually the quarterbacks aren't that good. So it depends on who you have throwing the ball. So, I mean, it's going to be huge where he's drafted at to see, at least somebody that can get him the ball and not, make him sit there and, just try to catch 50-50 balls and see if he can pull them down.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say receivers because we just saw this week where Justin Jefferson was on a podcast or a show, and he was just going on and on glowingly about our guy Kyler Murray and how excited he was to have him. He basically just saying, J.J. McCarthy stinks. So do you think Justin Jefferson will have that rebirth with Kyler Murray? And I know I've already thrown it out there, my bold prediction, Kyler Murray, comeback player of the year with the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I think Jefferson's playing the definite political both sides of the fence thing. Because at the same time, I just read, he was like, oh, J.J. McCarthy and I hung out. We worked on a lot of things. We wouldn't be on the same page. And then later on in the interview, yeah, I'm excited to see what Kyler Murray brings to the table. And, if you can make those plays on those throws. And it's like, dude, you just want somebody to get you the ball. You don't care who the hell it is. It's like, somebody just get me the ball so I can do something with it.
Yeah, and it's going to be exciting to see once we start talking fantasy and all that, how the Vikings, combo if they have a rebirth or not. And in Philadelphia, where the team that we follow, the Philadelphia Eagles, it's going to be interesting to see, can Jalen Hurts have that bounce back season? And then I know it was from his agent. There was like clips of Devontae Smith working out on the internet, best shape of his life. Devontae Smith, can they get him a hamburger at least? Get him up to about 180. Because if he's going to be the Eagles' number one guy, they're pushing that narrative because, as we said, AJ Brown's out the door.
Yeah, any sport where they show the off-season workout, first of all, it's PR garbage. My favorite was for the Sixers. They would always show a shirtless Ben Simmons shooting three-pointers in a gym with like either eighth graders on him or just by himself. It's like Ben's been working on his threes. It's like, come on, man, get into some game situations and we'll see what's going on. Devontae Smith, I don't think there's a person that's going to say that he's not a good wide receiver in the NFL. He is. But the fact is, can he be the number one guy? And do they have a number two that can actually, create a little separation for him?
Yes, and we'll see because you move him to the outside. You got Hollywood Brown, who's the smallest receiver as well. Wicks is not the biggest guy either. They could have a pretty small group, and maybe they do go in the draft and get a bigger receiver. We know their history trying to get some of those bigger receivers, though. Mac Hollins, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He didn't do too well. Christy Jones, he didn't live up to, you could go on and on with that big receiver that didn't kind of live up to expectations. Reggie Brown, I could go on and on with the Philadelphia Eagles. But do you think, is Roseman the right guy to select a receiver? I know everybody's like, oh, he got it right, with Devontae Smith, but the Eagles, we talked about their picks on offensive linemen. They've had some bad first-round receivers they've taken, other than like a Jeremy Maclin, but we all remember Jalen Rieger and Nelson Aguilar. I mean, is he the right guy to pick a receiver?
Once again, I'm going to support Mac Hollins. He's turned his career around. Big play Mac. But, there's a lot of misses, that's for sure. I mean, Whiteside, that's the one that hurts right there. It's like Rager, that was another bad one. And so it's almost like he identified that they needed the position filled. He just picked the wrong guy. So, I mean, yeah, it's Howie's team, so Howie's got to make the picks, but it hasn't been good for him.
Yeah, and we'll see. Everybody wants that receiver, or the other one position, and the guy everybody's talking about, because Dallas Goedert signed a 1-year contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. Kevin, he's coming back for another year, but he was another guy. He's very banged up. He only signed for 1 year, $7 million, and it's like, all right, is this his last deal? They have Calcaterra back, Johnny Munn they signed from Jacksonville. There's really not a lot in the tight end room, so everybody is drooling over Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon, 6'3", 245, 51 catches last year, 531 yards, 8 touchdowns. I mean, he's that new receiver. You can move him out in space. He's almost as athletic as the tight end and that the Bears signed Loveland last year. He's a guy you see. He's like a big receiver, and that's what everybody's saying about Kenyon Sadiq.
Yeah, and he's got speed too. And if you're the Eagles and you don't want to make that move to get that wide receiver in the first round, that's maybe something you look at right there. It's like, all right, now we can do maybe 2 tight end sets. Maybe this is how we're going to do our offense now. Also, something where Jalen, is maybe more secure throwing like shorter passes, getting a guy with big speed and body out and open, and you can separate. You put a safety on him or a linebacker, you're in a win situation. So that would be something I would look into if I was the Eagles, definitely, because the kid on paper looks good.
Yeah, he does, and a lot of people are excited because he runs like the 4.3, 4.4 range in terms of his speed. I mean, you get a tight end like that, and the Eagles have not had a game-breaking tight end like that, except for like a Keith Jackson. I mean, a guy that could take it to the house. He was a high draft pick. I think he may have been the last tight end that they took in the first round, but it's just been some of their tight ends been a little hit or miss as well. So. Um, that's going to be interesting. I don't, not a lot of first round tight ends, but everybody's talking about Kenyon City because that's a name to watch in Pittsburgh the first 2 days of the draft, see where he lands. Another player that everybody's excited about around the National Football League and talking about is Jeremiah Love. You brought him up earlier. I mean, he's 6', 214, extremely fast. They're comping him to Saquon Barkley, possibly with better hands in terms of catching the football. 27 catches, 280 yards last year for Notre Dame, and 3 touchdowns catching the ball. I mean, just talk a little bit about Jeremiah Love, and where do you think he's going to land? I'm hearing Tennessee at 4 may take a look at him. The Browns at 6, the Commanders at 7. Where do we see Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame going?
I do not see him falling past Washington. That's I think it's either the Titans or Washington. They're going to be one of the two teams that grab him. Cleveland has so many other glaring holes. It's like I don't think they should really go for running back in that spot. But they're Cleveland, so who the hell knows what they're going to do. But yeah, I don't think he slides by Washington. That's for sure.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see where Jeremiah Love goes, and there's another back out of Notre Dame that's everybody's pretty high on as well. Speaking of teams being high on somebody and re-signing them, the LA Rams are working on an extension for MVP quarterback Matthew Stafford. He is 38, but he was MVP, as I said, last season, led them to the NFC Championship game. Uh, they're going to have him probably through 2027 now. Is this a good move for the Rams, and is he going to be able to make it to the end of that contract?
That's a two-parter there, Lloyd. Is it a good move for the Rams? Yeah, they have to do it because they have nothing coming in. So unless you want to make this season a wash, and I mean, even if you draft somebody, you want to groom them and everything else. So you need like a 2-3 year window with that. And if you have the luxury of having Matthew Stafford there, all the better. Now, is he going to finish that contract? Probably not. Probably not. With the health issues he's already had coming up the last like couple years now and getting even older. Yeah, I don't see him finishing out the contract, but is it the right move for him to make right now? I think so.
And he was playing so well, with Devontae Adams, and hopefully Puka Nakua gets himself straight in rehab, and works his way to that big contract that he's trying to get to match JSN, and they could be very dangerous if they have their full complement of weapons and still on Kyron Williams. They were big on those tight end sets. They used to go with 3 tight ends out there, Parkinson and Higbee and the rest of that group. They were spreading the football around, going in that 13 personnel, which is 1 back and 3 tight ends, and you know McVay's a mad scientist, so I do believe that Stafford is the right guy for them. The interesting thing, Kevin, and I wanted to get your take on this, is Jimmy G, their pretty boy backup. He's talking about retiring. And if he goes, what are they going to do in terms of a backup?
Well, there's always a trade for Tanner McKee. Everybody loves Tanner McKee. Just throw that one into the works right there. Jimmy Garoppolo, I will say this. He's done more with his skill set than a lot of people have to be the level of success that he's had in the NFL. So if he wants to retire, that was a better run than anyone would have thought he would have had in the NFL, that's for sure. So, but the Rams, I mean, it's always next guy up. You get an older veteran or you get a younger guy with some talent. And once again, just throwing it out there, if they would go for a Tanner McKee, that's somebody you could groom behind Matthew Stafford.
And they also have Stetson Bennett, who's one of those college quarterbacks we talked about, great at Georgia, but not much of a pro. He's on their roster, and I want to throw a name at you. And a lot of people said he's available, and McVay loves working with reclamation projects. He worked with Baker Mayfield at a certain time. Anthony Richardson, he's not. They told him not to come to camp for the Colts. He is available. Could McVay rebuild Anthony Richardson into a pro quarterback?
There's a reason he's available. He's a bum. He is a bum and he's a bust. He's got no heart whatsoever. But you got to think about these coaches, especially the offensive boy geniuses and all this stuff. It's like it feeds their ego if they can sit there and build somebody back. Like the Sam Darnold being built back, the Geno Smith being built back. If you could get there and get Anthony Richardson, I mean, no one's arguing the fact he's physically gifted. The fact is his head's not matching and his heart's not matching it either. I'd be shocked to see it, but, somebody will get him, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting thing, Kevin, is there's players that I'm hearing that could be on the trading block come Thursday, Friday during the NFL draft. And, Kyle Pitts, tight end from Atlanta, something saying he's on the block. Kayvon Thibodeau from the New York Giants. Keon Coleman from Buffalo Bills. Receiver Brandon Ayuk from the Niners. Richardson, Will Levis from Tennessee. Spencer Rattler, another quarterback who may get moved, and he was he was like the number one quarterback coming out of high school, and he didn't live up to expectations, and up and down with the Saints, and cornerback Kenny Moore from the Indianapolis Colts. He's 30 years old, but any of those names jump off, and should teams be thinking, "Oh, I need that guy"?
What the hell are you getting for Keon Coleman? That guy is a bum too. He was a high draft pick. That's right, Nate. I'm throwing that one out for you. He was a high draft pick, and he had maybe two good games. Like I remember it was the first game of the season he played well, and then I think he had like one other good game. So I mean, a lot of these guys, you might as well just wait for somebody to release them. I mean, unless you want to give them like a 6th-round draft pick for somebody, because there's not a big line of people trying to pick these guys up.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And it reminds me of the Eagles situation they were in with Sidney Brown, where they traded him to the Atlanta Falcons, I think for like a 7th round pick. It's like, all right, you're going to cut this guy, so we'll just give him to you, and you don't have to go through the waivers process. So some of these names that I put out there, I think teams once they get to training camp are like, we have 90 spots, and we pretty much have all the undrafted free agents we want, and everybody's always excited about their draft picks. So sometimes they have like 10 new players coming in through via the draft, and they want to get rid of these veterans that don't fit anymore. An interesting one, Kevin, I want to get your take on is Brandon Ayuk. John Lynch is done with him. He's very injured. They were contentious all during the season, back and forth, social media. They basically benched him and told him to go home. Is there a home for Brandon Ayuk in the National Football League?
There's a home for anybody that can play and isn't a pain in the ass. And that's the thing. Like Ayuk had some big problems there. He wasn't liking the money he was getting or any touches he was getting. So I mean, if you're injured and can't play and you complain, yeah, nobody wants you around, But there's always positions to be filled. I mean, you look at the Eagles right now. Once again, just throw it out there. If you had a healthy Brandon Ayuk that was committed to playing football, would you bring him in? Yes, you would. So, I mean, there's somebody that's going to bring him in once again because there's the talent level that's out there right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Somebody's going to take a chance on him, and if it's for a 7th round pick or signing him off for waivers, bring him to camp, give him a look, and go from there. Now, a player that's getting a look, and right away, I saw this today, and I was like, oh, Kevin's going to love this. Odell Beckham Jr. was at the Giants facility. He had a tryout. John Harbaugh, for as great as he is, I guess he has a soft spot for Odell Beckham Jr. He brought him to the Ravens, and he wasn't half bad with them a couple of years ago. His last season was 2024 with Miami. I think he had 9 catches that season. Didn't play last year. He's 33 years old. Odell Beckham, is this the Giants saying, all right, we'll throw you a bone here, your former Giants great, or what's going on with him?
Never saw one guy get paid more money and more notoriety for one catch. And my one friend still says it was offensive pass interference. It's like even go back to Ayuk. There's such a dearth of talent in the wide receiver position. You're willing to bring in anybody that can possibly show up and produce. So that's why Beckham's probably going to get a look. I mean, do I think he's washed? Yeah, but he's going to get a look.
And speaking of receivers that could get a look, but I don't think this is happening. And this guy's 33. He probably had the most precipitous fall in the National Football League in a career. Michael Thomas hasn't been in the league for 2 years. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first-team All-NFL. And what happened to this guy? And is he the worst player to drop off like that in the National Football League?
The thing is, Michael Thomas could play. He was a problem at one point, but then it's just, I don't know if it was outside the NFL life, getting a hold of him. I don't know if it's his commitment to playing, but I mean, for someone to be a Pro Bowl player like that and just to disappear off the map, I mean, something was up.
Yeah, it's just crazy. He did have a lot of injuries, and he just was not the same guy. And I think a lot of times he one of them guys that got his money, you know what I mean? And then he just never was the same. And they moved on without him. They got Chris Olave and some other young receivers, and Thomas was just an afterthought. So I don't think he's going to get back in the league. But yeah, I just thought, wow. The only other guy I could think like that is maybe Albert Hainsworth who got all that money and signed with Washington and all the, my one Washington friend, he's always like, hey, 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 Fat Albert, a guy that didn't want to play. Um, a lot of free agent guys like that. Are there any candidates like that this year around the National Football League? Guys that were signed, and you're like, he was not worth that.
I guarantee every team has one. There's always a guy that gets his money because a lot of guys get paid for things they've done in the past. So once that's the carrot at the end of the stick. So once you get the money, it's just like that's when you find out who's a real player and who's not. You get the guys that are satisfied with what they made. But I agree with you that Albert Hainsworth one, that was one of the biggest bust signings I ever saw in my entire life. I mean, when the guy stepped on the head of, was it Anthony Gerard, the offensive lineman, when the guy didn't have his helmet on, maybe he wasn't mentally stable. Maybe that was something we should have thought about for locking him up for this money. So, yeah, there's one on every team. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and it's just like, wow, boy, we made a mistake. And that's basically what I tell everybody. Everybody's like, Lloyd, the draft. And I said, like, look, we got to wait 2 to 3 years to see who does well in the draft. I don't really like giving grades and all that, and it's just a projection. So you're excited draft day, but 50% of these guys within the next 4 years, you're going to forget about them.
Yeah, and it's exactly what happens. Like, half the names that we've said right now over the past couple weeks aren't even going to be in the NFL in 4 years. But it's one of those things. This is their time. This is their time to be seen, to see if they can play, what ability level they have. But you're absolutely right. You won't know if it was a good draft or a bad draft for like about 3 years.
Yeah, and you won't. Some guys don't get drafted, and they come in the league as undrafted free agents, and they make their mark there. And a guy who got his money, and I'm already worrying about this for them, for his team. The Colts paid Alec Pierce. I mean, the guy, forget that I'm already mad at him for fantasy football purposes, but he had ankle surgery after being the highest paid receiver in free agency, Kevin, and they're saying he will be, quotes, ready for training camp. But what is going on with the Colts? And Steichen is on a hot seat there.
I thought that was a horrible signing. I mean, when Alec Pierce is on the field, once again on the field, he's a good player. The guy can't stay on the field. He's never been able to, whether it be concussion problems or other lingering injuries. And the fact he's already got this one after securing the bag, that does not bode well for the Colts or Steichen at this point.
Yeah, it's something that the Colts are going to monitor, and Ballard, who's the GM there, and Steichen, as I said, the head coach, they are on the hot seat with Carly Ursay Gordon, a new owner. Their father passed away, and she's taken over the team, and she's very hands-on. She's been on the sidelines, and she even had a headset on at one point. So, did she keep an eye on this? And as with anything, when a new owner comes in and you've had a coach like Steichen that hasn't gotten it done, the bullseye's going to be on him. He's on one of the hottest seats in the NFL. And his buddy, Jonathan Gannon, who he came into the NFL as head coaching ranks with, he was already fired with the Cardinals. So we'll monitor the Colts and see where they go. I think they're one of the teams, Kevin. Yeah, Nate and I were keeping track of this because of the Sauce Gardner trade. They don't have a first-round pick. So, in terms of the Colts, Daniel Jones, they re-signed him. He's coming off a big Achilles injury. Uh, they do have Jonathan Taylor, one of the best in business, but they traded Michael Pittman to the Steelers. What's going on with the Colts, and where do we see them going into next season?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. If I'm Steichen, I'm not buying green bananas for the office. Because you sit there, you got a lot of money tied up in two injured guys in Daniel Jones now and Alec Pierce. You got everyone focusing on Taylor. Pittman's gone. You do have Warren that you drafted last year at tight end, but there's not a lot of weapons there at this point that are healthy. So for a team, that made that deal for Sauce Gardner, you don't have the number one draft, your first round draft pick. You're in trouble already, and we haven't even started the clock on the draft day yet.
Yeah, and the AFC South, we know, is like little sisters are born in terms of winning the Super Bowl. And yeah, the division's there for the be had. But I think the Colts, if this season goes awry, given that they're waiting on Daniel Jones to come back, I definitely think Steichen may not make it back, and they may move in another direction. And Ballard as well, the GM there. So we'll watch how the Colts move forward. And we're talking NFL draft here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. So glad everybody can be with Kevin and I this evening. Speaking of the bag, Kevin, Seattle Seahawks defensive lineman Byron Murphy II. I don't know if you saw this. They pranked him in terms of he paid for a team dinner. They gave him a bill for $155,000. What would you do if they gave you a bill for $155,000?
I would excuse myself to the restroom and leave those guys. Say, I'm out of here, man. $155,000. Vince Young paid for meals like that. No, that guy's not paying for that.
Yeah, well, and it was a prank, but in the end, it was only $38,000. But $38,000 for one meal? Are you kidding me? That's a lot of seafood, and I think I know a restaurant that was hey, come eat here for $38,000 for one meal.
If I'm paying for that check, it's like, does everyone have to get their baked potato loaded? Come on, man, you guys are breaking me, man. You're killing me here.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's when I see that, and we talk about these guys getting broke and all that. It's just like, I know they're making millions, and some of them are making hundreds of millions. But it's like, man, that's a lot of cake, and carry their bags, Rook. Don't buy them a $38,000 dinner. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks for joining, Penguin, one of our loyal texters. He's on the board, and I think his team's the Cardinals. We were talking about the Cardinals earlier, and Jacoby Brissett situation. In terms of tight ends, is McBride the best tight end in football? I know I have that argument with Nate over and over again. And McBride has had a great year last year, and is he the top guy in terms of tight ends when you're going to fantasy football wise?
Yeah, he's one of the top two, that's for sure. I mean, there's a lot of guys. He's solid, man. He puts up numbers, It's like, and he hasn't had a really good quarterback there, and he still hangs numbers. So, yeah, I put him in that echelon.
Gotcha. Yeah, and Penguin's correct me. He is a Packers fan, not Cardinals, but he lives in Arizona, so we talked a little Cardinals there. But in terms of the Packers, Jordan Love, this is a guy, with all the measurables and everything. Can he turn a corner and make them a true contender? They're always in the playoffs with Matt LaFleur, but they just can't seem to turn a quarter with the Packers. And Kevin went offline for their second. Is Micah Parsons the right guy to invest in? We're waiting for Kevin to come online, and we're talking Packers here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. Oh, it might be me, not the guys. Oh, Angel to the rescue. It says it is Kevin. I'm still there. So Angel, you can hear me. You're an Eagles guy. You don't have to pop on if you want to. Eagles, are they going offensive lineman, defensive lineman, or are they going to surprise people and go receiver, given that A.J. Brown is going to be traded? Oh, all right. Angel's going to jump on a pinch hit for Kevin. I don't know where. He probably got excited for his Flyers and bumped his computer or something. We can't have him there. But, yeah, everyone's excited for the draft, and everybody always asks me for a couple things during the draft. Tommy Castellanos from Florida State, he's a quarterback who may be a conversion candidate. He's playing some slot receiver for teams. They're looking at him. I tried to get this other young man on in terms of a local prospect. He's someone that I know for a long time. Diamond in the rough. People always love that. And look for this young man in terms of being a late round pick or undrafted free agent. He is from Texas Christian University. He is their center, Colton Deary. He is from Malvern Prep. He's a former wrestler, and I've known him a long time. Very good in terms of leverage. I think he's going to be someone that people need to watch in terms of being a late pick or a undrafted free agent. All right, I think there's Angel. Thanks for jumping in there. Angel, what has you excited for the draft, and where do you think the Eagles are going to go?
I got no excitement whatsoever for the draft because the NFL drives me crazy every single day, every single year. For the Eagles, there's been a lot of talk. We know about the one thing that we're not even going to get into when it comes to a certain reporter. The A.J. Brown situation still drives me nuts. I wish it would get that one solidified, but who knows what's going to happen. Truthfully, I think defense would be the better way to go for the Eagles this season, but they still need some work on the O-line to be able to protect our quarterback, which I'm not super thrilled about. I have some good choice words, not negative choice words. I just think the fallback from last year, and I think the one thing that drives me crazy with this team is that we've seen it before. 2017, they go to the Super Bowl, they win it. 2018, we saw what happened. It was a complete collapse. Last year, kind of almost the same thing, and it almost went in reverse fashion from what we saw the season prior. So I'm just hoping, and I know that people love to call Philly radio stations and tell them to blow up this team, fire Nick Sirianni. I get it because I'm there as well, except for we're going to see if Nick actually gets his act together this season because I think Howie and Jeffrey Lurie were pretty much adamant about if things don't work out well, I want to see him past week 6 here with this team because of the transactions that Howie did to try to save the team, try to save the season last year, and things just not going their way. There has to be attitude adjustments. It can't be all about me. It's got to be about the team because there's no I in team. There's also no we in the team. There's all of us. And as they say over and over again, right? We all we need, we all we got. That's what the Eagles need. They need to clean up the defense a little bit. Offensive line, Lane Johnson, I don't know what's going to happen there. He's banged up. We know this after the whole juicing thing and suspension thing and so on and so forth. He's very injury prone. Good player, just injury prone. So the Eagles have to look at that as well. And then you also have Zach Ertz that said that he would like to come back to at least finish up one season with the Eagles so he can retire as an Eagle. I wouldn't, in a way, I would like Zach Ertz back because I think it's better than our current tight end that's with Dallas and not the Cowboys, our own Dallas Goedert. I think bringing back Zach Ertz could maybe jumpstart his offense a little bit, but it's going to be this season, I think, for me and the Eagles, is going to be a wait and see what happens during camp. And then how much playtime, which drove me nuts last year. Stop with the whole thing. Let's cuddle the veteran players. And we're only going to put them in week 1. And we've seen it, and you've seen it back to back, Lloyd. 2 seasons in a row. We wait until week 1, game 1, to put in the veterans. And then we look like a bunch of idiots out there because we're in the trenches. And now everybody's, wait, was I supposed to run? What was the pass? What call was that? Do we play it? So I don't know why we're trying to call these. If you're going to get injured, you're going to get injured. Regardless of how much you think you're going to prep these guys, stop with the holding them back. Make them play through them preseason. I don't care what the agents say. Get things together because the Eagles really need to improve. Washington continues to get better every season. The Giants, even though, yes, they were kind of in the toilet, they eventually will turn things around. Dallas just sucks. So I'm not even worried about Dallas. They'll fold. They'll do the usual Dallas things. But Eagles really, really need to show a lot, including the league, that this fluke that they have when they win the Super Bowl and it collapses the following year, to be the best, you got to beat the best. And right now, they got to beat themselves.
Yeah, and an interesting thing, Angel, you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles is a lot of people point to the players, in terms of Jalen Hurts, and they point the finger at him. I think Sirianni is under the microscope this season. His guy Patullo did not get it done. Now they're bringing in Sean Mannion. He's unproven. Yes, he was NFL backup. He's calling plays for first time. So that offense, a lot of eyes are going to be on that. Defensively, they did get Vic Fangio to come back one more season, and we'll see how that works out for him. No Stoutland after 12 years on staff in terms of offensive line. They got Cooper coming in to take his place. But I think they are going to concentrate on that offensive line because, as you said, Lane Johnson, very beat up the last couple of years, had that Liz Frank injury. His foot beat up. Tyler Steen at right guard, he's kind of been a disappointment. Cam Jurgens played well the Super Bowl year, but last year was kind of down. What have you done for me lately? Landon Nickerson played through a lot of injuries. Was talking about maybe retiring. They're going to look at maybe a replacement for him. And Jordan Mailata has definitely been very solid left tackle, and
Mhm.
they can probably have him for a couple more years. But I do agree with you that tight end is position in need. Dallas Goddard, they got him back under 1 year. Calcaterra is still there, but yeah, Zach Ertz has played extremely well for an older player for the Washington Commanders. Yes, he had a bad injury last year to end his season in terms, I think it was an ankle or a knee, but I think he could come back and it could fit him into rotations. And maybe Mannion, who's McVay type of guy, brings a lot of those three tight end formations that McVay used last year.
Yeah.
And they bring in Ertz, or whether they bring in Sadiq in the draft. So I do think that offensive line, tight end, defense line, they just need a couple holes to fill on the defensive line. On the defensive line, Angel, and I ask you, Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt. They lost Jalen Phillips going to the Carolina Panthers. Do they have enough in terms of a pass rush, and is that an area they could look at?
That is an area they need to look at for sure. They don't have enough there, not for this upcoming season, unless they do something. I guess Howie works his magic once again somewhere throughout the middle part of the season. Start with what they have and improve from there, or see what's left over from the draft combine and the draft itself to see what's out there. Who's a walk on? Who's that? What is it? Sixth round, 199th one that's out there. The one jewel that may be there, but yeah, they'll definitely need some work.
And Howie Roseman, and a lot of people, he had in the past, I picked on him. He did have a spotty history in terms of his draft picks, but he's really gotten it right the last couple of years, going to the SEC, mining that area, getting a lot of Georgia players, a lot of Alabama players, and I think that's where he's probably going to go for this defensive help. They've secured the secondary with Reek Woolen at the one cornerback. They have Q Mitchell at the other, Cooper DeJean. Safety may be an area that the Philadelphia Eagles look at to improve as well. They're getting Makuba back from injury, but the other safety position is kind of a head scratcher. You're wondering, is Marcus Epps the right guy? He's a veteran guy, but what's he have left in the tank? So a lot of question marks for the Philadelphia Eagles, but it's a big draft. They have a lot of picks, and we'll see if Howie Roseman, who's traded up and down the draft, will do something this year. So another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029, the Game Coast Sports Digital Network. Thanks for Kevin for being on with me for his technical difficulties. Angels did a great job behind the glass, and then jumped on for the last part of the show. Did a great job. So thanks for joining me. We'll have a lot to talk about next week as we recap who we thought did well in the draft and who didn't do well. We'll focus on the Philadelphia Eagles, who they're taking. But as I always say, it takes 2 to 3 years to evaluate a draft. But we'll see as we move forward. But thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.